EP, showrunner and creator Sacha Penn, Kanan Stark himself, Mekai Curtis, Rock Thomas, Kanan's mother and the drug queen Penn, Patina Miller, Mr. London Brown, Marvin Thomas, Omar Epps, Detective Malcolm Howard, and the young Jukebox, Hailey Kilgore. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Happy to be.
Thanks, man.
So, guys, thank you so much for joining us all. Now, first of all, I want to talk, Sacha. This is, again, as we said in the introduction, part of the ongoing Powerverse, but this is an origin story, too, about a character who we're not going to see anymore in Power going forward, because obviously Curtis's character died in the original Power. But give us a sense of what was some of the ideas that you guys were kicking around for how you wanted to tell this story, because you said it so precisely in 1990s New York. It was like it was born from this.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's a coming of age story. You know, I think that was always the original intention. You know, when I met with Courtney and 50 early on, really all they said to me is like, look, we think this is a character that sort of demands an origin story, because the original Kanan was so polarizing, you know, in terms of, you know, fans loved him or hated him, and he was, you know, he had sort of an oversized presence in the original series. And so what they said to me was, look, we think there's an opportunity to do something like Goodfellas as a series with this character. And that to me was really, really appealing.
It's a pretty high bar.
It's a pretty high bar. But you know, obviously, you know, the era was really of interest to me. I was in New York around that time, so it was something that really felt familiar to me. And again, you know, the original Kanan, as realized by 50 Cent, was what just felt like a character that gave me a lot of sort of, you know, opportunity to explore his family and the world in which he grew up. And when I so that's really all they gave me. And then I just thought to myself, well, really, you know, kids to a certain extent, you know, are the product of the homes in which they were raised. And to me, it felt like the really important relationship would be between Kanan and his mother. And again, you know, and this has been somewhat documented. It's somewhat loosely based on 50's relationship with his own mom. You know, she died when he was much younger, but certainly the fact that he was raised by his mother informed some of the direction that I was sort of heading in early on with the idea and the story in the series.
Mekai, for you, you know, so many people, they think they know Kanan, and they think that they clearly think of 50 and what they saw on Power. So for you, playing the younger version, did you talk to 50 and sort of try to get a sense of where he thought that character was coming from and what that character would have been like as a teenager?
Absolutely. I think there was a bunch of talking to 50. There was, you know, a lot of conversations with Sacha as well as Courtney to, you know, really just try to mold essentially this starting spot we're finding this character in, because it's, you know, on the complete opposite end of the spectrum of the Kanan we know in the original series. So there definitely was a lot of conversations and sit downs of, you know, even from the first time I auditioned in the room, there was a conversation I had with Courtney and Sacha where, you know, they really kind of drove home the point of what they were trying to do with the relationship they were building with Rock and Kanan, in terms of, you know, he wants to be there to protect her and she wants to be there to protect him. And just that, you know, there's this blind love that a son has for his mother. And there's this innocence also that they wanted to play. So there was definitely those conversations of, you know, just how to bring that all together while also bringing the, you know, the essence of the original character. It's been a lot of fun getting, you know, both this character and this whole storyline.
Patina, one of the things that I've noticed about the Powerverse, Kanan and Ghost, and of course the original one, is there's such a great depth of strong female characters. You know, so often in crime dramas or crime stories, it's a lot of dudes, and women basically play either the mothers, Sopranos being the best example, or the girlfriends, or the wives, et cetera, et cetera. This is not the case here. And Rock is certainly, if nothing else, a strong female character. So for you, I'm assuming that's part of what attracted you to the character, but I want to get a sense of how you found this character and found that role, and what were some things that inspired you for that character?
Well, how I found the character, how the role found me. I was coming off of a television series, Madam Secretary, and I went out to LA.
You played a very good press secretary.
Grant, yes. So
I was slightly disgraced at the end, but that's nobody's fault.
It was a lot. It was a lot at the end. But, I really, at the end of that process, I realized I wanted to go and do something completely opposite, go to the extreme. I didn't know what it was going to be. So I hopped on a flight to LA. I met with a bunch of people, and then it kind of fell into my lap, the idea of the character. And I remember reading the script, and from the beginning to the end, I was just so enthralled by the whole thing. And I had never seen a character quite like Raquel Thomas. I've done a lot of auditioning as a Black woman in the business. We've seen strong Black female characters, but what we haven't seen is like a whole Black woman, and that's her being strong, her being loving, her being vulnerable, so many colors to who the character is. This was the first time that I had seen that in a script. And it excited me to be able to play all of those different things, and so from there, I just started thinking about my own life, as far as my inspiration, thinking about the women in my life. My mom, who was a young mother, a single mom, she had me at 15. So I already came with some sort of an experience being the child of a young mother. And then all of the women, I grew up in the South, and I grew up a young girl wanting to dream, and wanting to do this thing. So I just took a lot of my influences from my own personal life and all the women that I know, strong women that I know, and I put them into her.
One of the things, Sacha, about the series, and we watched the first episode, but obviously season 1 had a glorious run, and you guys are going to be back for a second season. Is that sometimes they'll start off with these 1 or 2 characters, and then it'll just kind of cut to other characters and cut to 1 or 2. You guys seem to be expanding this, and I wanted to get an idea from you. And Patina, the reason I asked this of you is because I wanted to get a sense from you of you guys working together, because Rock has just gotten, there's more of her, and there's more of who Kanan is as we watch the maturation and evolution and extension of this family. And Sacha, can you give us a sense of how you mapped that out and what you were looking for in your actors to kind of find you, to get you to the beats and the points you wanted?
Yeah, I think, from its inception, Dominic, I always saw this as a family drama. I think, you mentioned The Sopranos earlier. I think, it was always envisioned that way. Certainly the relationship between Kanan and Rock was going to be sort of the spine of it to a certain extent. But also, as is often the case in families like this, the extended family is a huge part of the story. And so it always is envisioned to be that way. And that's I think part of what makes it so interesting is we see all these different sort of forces and personalities sort of landing on Kanan in all sorts of interesting ways, whether it's, certainly Rock is the seminal relationship in his life, but there's also Jukebox, who is his closest friend and greatest confidant. And I think that's been really interesting for a lot of the Power fans, because of course, Kanan and Jukebox, their history in Power is very, very different, right? And so it's really interesting component for them to see.
Hardcore, I would say.
Yes, absolutely. So, I think I always felt like, and in talking to Courtney and 50 earlier on, I always felt like it had to be a family drama. And we had to see all these different people and personalities in Kanan's life and understand how, because again, that is that's what it's like to grow up. There's always people around you. Adults,
Hailey,
I should
like
say, and
Mekai,
friends.
you are playing a character who most of us know from the Power series, obviously. And we know her as an older character and kick-ass character, for no other way to put it. But in this series, we learn a lot of where Jukebox came from, how she became the person she was, and a lot of the challenges and discriminations that she faced because of choices in her own life. So for you and Mekai, what was it like developing the relationship between the two characters, and what was developing the relationship between the two of you as actors to find that genuineness, that authenticity of the closeness, and some of the divisions that family have?
It's so exciting as an actor because I think Mekai feels the same way. We know exactly where they end, and we know exactly where they're at when they end. And Courtney did such an incredible job fleshing out these two characters, and obviously Anika Nani Rose originating Jukebox, and Mr. Jackson originating Kanan. They fleshed these characters out all the way. So the exciting thing for me was really bridging the gap between who we know as they end and introducing who they are when the story begins. I think the process for Mekai and I'm blessed because Mekai and I got along. So we kind of clicked instantaneously, which, that's not always the case. And when you're playing two family members that we hit the ground running with the story, it's always so great when you have a scene partner that you already have that natural chemistry with.
Mekai, the same way?
Honestly, she kind of nailed the nail on the head with that one. But like she said, we know the ultimate arc of these characters. So really, the joy has been getting to kind of deconstruct that, getting to pull apart how these people became these people and why these people became these people, knowing where they happen to be, getting to actually find yourself in these moments as an artist. And get to, pick and choose your spots and how you want this to lead into, where this character ultimately ends up has been, I think, the most exciting part, actually getting to be in these moments and find these slight connections with Hailey and with Patina, Omar, anybody in any scene, I think has been, just the nice little bit of magic on top of this whole experience.
Sacha, it's interesting what both Hailey and Mekai talk about there, because they're correct. We do know how these stories end. Is that for you as a showrunner, as a writer, is that liberating or is that constraining?
It's a great question. It's a little bit of both, to be honest, right? On the one, because people know how the story ends, right? They know how the story ends, so you're kind of fighting against that a little bit, because the obvious response, well, I know how the story ends. What do I really care how it begins? And I think, frankly, that's the most interesting part of the story, and that's where the opportunity is you're afforded this opportunity to see how someone becomes who they become, which is really, really interesting. And so that, in its way, has been liberating because, look, again, we all know who Kanan is in the original Power, and I think you could probably make the argument he's a little bit of a sociopath. And so,
a little bit.
Yeah. So
don't really even think you need to make that argument, actually, Sacha. It's kind of like sun goes up, sun comes down.
Thank you. So it's really interesting to see how someone becomes a sociopath. That's interesting. They're not necessarily born that way, and so that, to your point, Dominic, is where the opportunity is as a writer, and also as Mekai and Hailey and as an actor. This series has been a collaboration, I think, in the best ways possible amongst all of us, from the writers to the actors to the people, to everyone who's on the show. We've all worked together to tell this story, and everyone's familiar with the original Power. So we all bring a little something in from what we already know, and that's been really, really exciting, I think, at least for me, to see that sort of evolution.
Omar and London, you bring into the series new characters to the Powerverse who we don't know where they end up. We don't know where they're both with Marvin and Detective Howard. Omar, for you, what about this role attracted you? And as we've watched who he is, who Detective Howard is, we've learned more about him and his relationship to the community and the family over season 1. Give us a sense maybe of how that worked for you as an actor.
Well, for me as an actor, I kind of look at Howard as an octopus. Like, he has tentacles everywhere, right? Like, he's on the legal side, he's on the street side, he's got a bit of everything. And but this is, I just think it's such a powerful story about Black family, Black love, Black brotherhood, a Black single mother, trying to figure it out. In these times, and these times were different. Things were a little bit less PC back then. Let's put it that way. And Howard is in the middle of all of that. And I think he uses the badge as a weapon, not for the greater good, but for the greater good for him.
Well, it does feel like sometimes
he
it feels like sometimes you guys are really drilling into some of those infamous New York cops of the '70s, what have you, where the badge was just a better way to commit crime, at least on your own terms, or at least to be the boss on your own terms.
He manipulates the system for him because he's still under the system and the institutions that exist and stuff like that. And but at the end of the day, I think that there's a deep history with him in the community, and obviously with him and Rock, and but he's a great guy.
London, in terms of, I'm not quite sure I ever want to use the term great guy to describe Marvin, but I certainly describe him as there's certainly a lot of guy there. Sacha talked about it earlier about Kanan being at its heart. I see it as a coming of age origin story, but he's right. I think very correct. Obviously, clearly he created the show, but of course he created the show. Is that it's a family drama, and for you, for Marvin Thomas as a part of this, how do you feel with this as this drama evolves? Because as I mentioned, your character is a new character to this power verse for us.
For me, I feel like I'm an octopus. I tend to wait. That's from the great Omar. I always like to learn from the best, man. I always like to learn from the best. I think that what's cool about Marvin, and first of all, just playing an original character, I get to create him from the ground up and establish him. And I think if people look into Marvin more in-depthly, they'll understand that Marvin actually is a little bit of everyone. When he's giving orders to his nephew, Kanan, he's Rock. When he's dealing with like that, that's and being a little more sensitive, that's a little bit of Lulu. When he's being sinister, we see a piece of Neat. When he's dealing with his internal demons of Jukebox. So he's actually layered in that kind of way. And so I just wanted to make sure that I brought something interesting amongst all these other very solid, strong actors that would keep Marvin around and be someone that people would like to follow throughout the story.
Patina, one of the things that's happened since Raising Kanan debuted in July of 2021 is the intense reaction that people have had. And I guess in a way I'm playing off what Sacha talked about and what Mekai and Hailey talked about, which is people know these characters. So they've already feel investment in them from the original Power, and now they're looking at that. For you, because Rock is a new element to this saga, what has surprised you about the reaction from people? And is there anything in particular that you just really didn't expect anyone to come forward with?
I mean, at the end of the day, all I wanted for the project was just to present this character, give her the humanity. She's such a flawed character, but find the humanity inside of her. And hopefully that resonated with people. And for me, reading the character and reading the script, it always felt super relatable, even though Rock was doing these kind of, in a dark world and also raising a son, she's doing these things. But throughout all of it, she felt relatable and real and like someone we knew and in some capacity. And so the biggest thing for me is it's been an overwhelming reception to the character, and just how strong she is has really resonated with women and men. I think seeing a woman in charge like that is it's been a lot of different things for a lot of people, but I know for women, it's very empowering to see that, to see how Rock has maneuvered through this world. Not only is she just a female in a man's world, but she's a single mom, and she's successful at her business, but she's also raising her son, and she's successful at that for now. I don't know if we can say she's super successful at that right now.
Well, I was going to say, that's one of the conflicts of the show. Clearly, he wants to get Kanan in a good school, et cetera, and he wants to run with mom, and there's the conflict there, and you see it when you go out, when your character goes out on the date, and all these other things of trying to live that life and living the queen pin life. Yeah, and I just want to say I've gotten a lot of responses just in DMs, and I even had this woman come up to me when I was taking my child to the petting zoo, and she ran over to me and she was like, "Oh my God, Rock.
I love you so much. You're me. He's like, I have a Kanan. I have a son who's a Kanan, and he's been in all this stuff, but I showed him your show, and I just feel so seen because it's what I'm actually going through with my son. So I think, you know, this stuff has the power to really change people and really just touch people, and it connects with them on that family level. You know, I think we all deal with drama as a family, but to connect with a woman who's going through that same thing with her own son, it really spoke to me. And it's speaking to a lot of people who go through this family trauma, these family things that, you know, that's what makes me feel like she's real and she's touching people. Long-winded way of saying that, but, you know.
Awesome. No, by the way, Patina, awesome way of saying that. Thank you so much for saying that. Mekai and Hailey, I want to ask you this. This is kind of a dumb question, but I'm old enough that I can ask this question. Pretty much, I think everybody on the panel, except for you two, grew up in the 90s. You guys, not so much. So I wanted to get a sense of how was that for you, and what is it kind of like did you just do a crash course on a lot of old MTV, or and watching New Jack, or how did you figure out how was this world, which is so different, this world of 32 years ago now? Omar's laughing because he knows what I'm talking about. It's so long ago. How did that feel for you to kind of discover that world?
Well, you know, I mean, honestly, I feel like it's a little bit of both. You know, I've always been a fan of the 90s myself. A lot of my favorite pop culture movies, you know, artists, music, and whatnot are from the 90s. So, you know, I've had a dare I say, surfacey knowledge of, you know, that culture in that time. But actually getting to, you know, enthrall myself in this world, in such a, you know, an important piece of time, through the clothes, through the dialect, through even the vernacular. You know, because we're doing a period piece, Sacha was, you know, super adamant on, you know, there's certain phrases, even Omar, you know, they're on us all the time. God, you know, that's not something we really said in the 90s. You know, so just that attention to detail. Being a fan of the 90s, you know, I really should have been born in the 90s. I was born in 2000, right? I missed by a year. So this is me kind of vicariously living that. Thank you, Sacha, for that. But no, it's been an experience, man. It's I love it. It's fun. It's enjoyable getting to see all the cars, getting to see all the props, and you know, all the foods. It's amazing.
Hailey, how about you?
I will say. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. No, please.
Wait, what? Go, Sacha.
I was just going to say, I will say that the day on set I felt the oldest is we had one of the actors with it wasn't Hailey, but she had a Walkman, and she had the cassette in a box, and she kept trying to put the cassette in the Walkman while it was still in the box. And I was like, oh my God. I almost retired right there, Dominic. I was like, all right, time for me to get the rock.
Did you intervene?
Everyone who was over the age of 30 in the room just shook their fucking heads. Was like, oh my God. But anyway, Hailey, please. I'm sorry.
We usually keep those to a minimum, though. Luckily, you studied.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I lucked out because I'm a 90s baby, so I was a baby in the 90s, literally. But I'm so glad that made so much of a difference. Yeah, I think the thing for me was, and I lucked out because Jukebox herself is a musical character. Whenever I develop a character in any story, part of my process is I just find music and I find people to kind of set the foundation for that process. And so the thing for me, especially with Juke/Laverne, or sometimes separating the two in one character, is just I listen to a ton of 90s music. Like Queen Latifah, that was my person for this role. And Lots of Young Mary J. Blige, that was the other anybody else just hard and had that swag. That's definitely who I based it off of. And, you know, also Omar has been super helpful. Patina super helpful. We have an incredible cast because people we're so collaborative as artists, even with Sacha, that, you know, if we're too scared to look stupid in front of Sacha, we can lean over to P and be like, but yeah.
How many quarters are we supposed to put in this in the
right. So yeah, super helpful. Everybody's been amazing.
Omar, people know you from so many works over the years. I have to ask you, there was a huge response when people heard you were joining the series. What kind of response have you had from people since it's been out and now you guys are getting ready to go into a second season?
It's been incredible. I mean, people have been super excited, and I would be remiss if I didn't remark upon this wonderful cast. I mean, like, you know, Hailey and I have spoken about the layers of the character that she's bringing to life is so incredible. Same thing with London. Same thing with P. I call her P Killer. You know, this single black woman who's a matriarch of this. But yeah, you said something earlier, Dominic, when you mentioned The Sopranos. It is that. You know what I mean? On a different level, though. It's our way. You know, and what Mekai is bringing to this character of how someone becomes who they are, you know, from this innocent, it's a coming of age story. So that takes me to Sacha. I think he's constructed an incredible show, an incredible cast of characters. And so I just been excited. Like, people just, you know, they feeling it. So they like that.
Yeah. I know a lot of people dig you as Detective Howard. A lot of people do. Sacha, we talked about it a little bit, and we're gonna close it up soon. But I have to ask you, season 2, where are you guys at, and can you give us any sense of where things are going?
We are about 2/3 of the way through shooting season 2. It's been great. I think, you know, what the fans can expect is that the relationship between Rock and Kanan becomes increasingly complicated, as you can imagine. Kanan starts
as opposed to being very simple right now.
Exactly. You know, Kanan starts to
nice, loving, go to McDonald's together.
Yes. But I will say, like, at its most basic, right, the show is about this collision of family and business, right? Like, it is. Like, that is the tension for Rock, which is like being a mother and also running your own business. Obviously, the stakes are higher; they're very different, but that is fundamentally what the show is about. And so,
now,
yeah,
are you gonna stay within the timeline? Or are we gonna see some jumps? Are we gonna see like 91 to 95 and that kind of thing?
No, we'll stay. I mean, the plan is to stay within the timeline. You know, for sure, we're not going to make any giant leaps to, you know, the year 2000 or whatever. No, we'll stay how we're doing it. You know, I think that again, like, season 2, just basically the stakes just get ratcheted up in every possible way. Kanan starts to realize stuff about his mom and himself. You know, Detective Howard increasingly becomes a player in this family drama. You know, Jukebox is still sort of reckoning with how the season ended for her and this relationship with Marvin, which is troubled. Marvin is trying to sort of redeem himself on a certain level. You know, Lou, who's played by Malcolm Mays, you know, he starts to become more deeply involved in the music business, but of course that also bumps up against the family business. And, you know, at the same time, we have Unique, who's played by Joey Badass, who is, you know, trying to figure out how he can rebuild his business and his life after what happens at the end of the first season. So there's a lot of moving pieces, man. There's a lot that's happening. And then there are players in this drama that we have not met yet in season 1 who will become important pieces of the puzzle in season 2. So listen, I think we're all really, really excited. You know, it's the season's coming along really, really well. You know, the pandemic obviously has impacted various things, but I think we're getting it done. And yeah, man, we're really excited. We're also super grateful for you. You know, thank you for caring about the show and for you know, showing us some love. It's been really, really great, man. And you've always been
my honor and pleasure, guys.
Yeah, you've always been a big power flag flyer. So I can speak for everybody involved, Courtney, 50, me, everybody, and say thank you.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you guys. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. Ladies and gentlemen, out there in the virtual world, the creator and cast of Power Book 3, Raising Kanan. Thank you guys for joining us.